Hello, world. This is the Know Your Place podcast, and this is episode 33. I'm jumping on here again, recording the lazy way because that's how we do. Anyway, this week I wanted to talk about a phenomenon. I'm not quite sure if it's just an American phenomenon or perhaps it's a worldwide phenomenon or if it's just a middle American phenomenon, but I want to talk about this phenomenon of conferences and convention centers. Now, um, I say this because I've attended a few and I've lived places where they have them, and I don't know. It seems interesting to me how many of them there are. Not so to give you a bit of background, when I was in college, the uh, because you're on campus, when you're on a university campus, they tend to hold these things in general, especially if you go to a large state university like I did in the University of Kentucky. So my first real experience with this was they hosted a thing they called a GIS day and a Geographic Information Systems day. And, while it wasn't necessarily sanctioned by a professional organization, per se. Lots of them were there. People are finding out what you could do in your career to do GIS and those kinds of things. So it was my first real taste of this, and I just thought it was kind of interesting. I was like, well, I guess just every college does this. But then what was really interesting was my senior year of undergrad at college. Me and a friend did a map, and we were invited to go present it at the CDAG conference, which is Southeastern Division of American Association of Geographers. And they held this conference in Savannah, Georgia. Now, it had a it was at a convention center that was, in the biggest hotel in town on the river, right in the heart of town. And Savannah's a decently sized city. I think it's like 130,000 people and then like maybe 500,000 metro or something. I don't know. It's a decently sized city. It's an independent city with its own culture. That is a pretty decent drive from any other major city around it. So it's about like 2 hours to Columbia, South Carolina, and like 3 hours to Atlanta or something. So yeah, I mean, it seemed like it was. I don't know. It seemed like it had reason to want to host a conference, if you will. Um, so we went there, and it was so part of what's interesting to me in these places that host conferences is it's not just about the stuff you attend while you're there. Like, yes, it is, right? You go, you have events, and obviously, if they're having a conference, you have different things you're scheduled to go to, seminars and such, right? But and I also say this from the experience my father has gone to lots of these throughout his career because he's in marketing. So, so they have that, but then, the place plays a role, right? Like if the conference is being held in Savannah, they gave us like they had a street walking tour as one of the events, or, you stay there and you get an interesting vibe for the town, and generally speaking, not necessarily all your meals are covered, you know. So you're gonna at least have one meal out on the town. You're gonna go explore the city, if you will, right? So so I really had a lot of fun there. It was interesting meeting all these people and attending these different things, and I had fun because I got to meet, other people who were studying geography like me, and there was actually other undergrads there. I was a little worried it was going to be postgraduates mainly, but there were undergrads there too, and it was a good time. I would definitely go back again. I really loved exploring the town more than actually attending the events at the conference. I was kind of lame for that, but my fellow people who went with me wanted to explore the town too. So we spent a lot of time exploring the town, more so than I have at any other conference I've been to. So yeah. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is A town that I consider this a little weirder about. Now, I'm not saying that. Obviously, okay. So the conference I attended while I was in Indiana was called the IGIC conference, which is the Indiana Geographic Information Consortium, which is the GIS professional society in Indiana. And it just happened the year that I decided to go to this. They were hosting it in Bloomington, Indiana, where I lived right outside of and worked in. And so, you know, but that wasn't the only conference I had attended in that building that is the convention center there. I also attended a conference for uh, 811, which was well, I worked with a company that did work for oil and gas lines. It was about utilities and marking utilities. So I find this. So why I bring this up as a contrast to Savannah is, while Savannah does have the Savannah School of Design, it's a city because it's a city. It's a region that's been its own region for several years. Not to say Bloomington hasn't. I guess Bloomington was founded in 1820, but the reason why Bloomington is even a city is because it has the state university in it, Indiana University, and its population now is about to reach 100,000. But prior to the last couple decades, it's been as low as 40. And so it feels kind of odd convention center. It is a destination for some people to go to Bloomington, and it's becoming a decent sized city. But um, it felt kind of weird. It felt weird that it was like a big deal they were hosting a conference there, because Bloomington is, um, like I said, it's not that big. It's about to be 100,000 people. But the other thing is it's only, well, with all the construction, it's been a little bit farther, but it's only an hour to Indianapolis. So it's not like there's not another major city around. And then it's an hour to Columbus, which is a city that also has a convention center of a pretty big size that's actually on the interstate. Now Bloomington has an interstate that comes to it, but before Bloomington wasn't on the interstate. So I don't know, it felt extremely weird to like be a place where they're like making a big deal about, we're hosting a conference. This is a conference town. Come tour the town. Not to say, it probably felt weird just because I live there too. It's weird being somewhere where they were hosting one, you know. But it was like, and that's something I'm going to get into a little later here in this discussion when I sort of wind it up. Is, do you have to have a certain requirement to even be allowed to have a convention center or say that you're going to host conferences? I really wonder how any of these stay afloat. Is it just like because people are just bored and they want to rotate a lot more? You know, I don't know. But anyway, because you always hear city leaders claim that conventions are a big boost to the local economy, and I guess they could be if you did it right. But man, it seems like there's way more supply than demand. There's so many centers, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, so um yeah, so then after that I got to finally attend a Kentucky area mapping professionals conference. As I've said before, I live in Kentucky. And I've always known a bunch of people in the organization, but I finally got to attend one when they did one in northern Kentucky, which was right by where I went to high school and where my parents live. And that's another really weird scenario because there's a convention center called the Northern Kentucky one that's in Covington, directly across the river, and like a 15-minute drive from the other one in Cincinnati that's called the Cincinnati Convention Center. And I guess they both stay afloat. I guess they both host enough things, but it feels weird. Again, it feels like, how many of these do you need? And then like there's a big conference space in this Hilton Hotel in Florence, which is right down the road, which is the city where the airport is in northern Kentucky. That's actually Cincinnati's airport. And it's like, how many of these spaces are being taken up? You know, I guess Cincinnati is a fairly big region. I've heard its regional population it puts in like the top 30 now. But it feels weird. It doesn't feel like there's enough demand to warrant this. But again, it was really cool. It was really neat to be at a conference space somewhere hosting. It's just so weird. It was somewhere I went to high school in. Again, generally it's weird to see another place where you kind of live and deal with every day be a destination. Like, because to do a conference, there's a certain requirement almost that, like, the people who are hosting or the committee that decides where it is, they got to get people excited for the destination, right? They got to be like, woohoo, here we are, right? They just have to. Otherwise, why, everybody would make fun of them. So, but then when you're the person that just lives there and you're just going there because it's home, you're like, yeah, this is okay, and but it did feel, I guess, if I had to compare to the one in Bloomington, it felt a little more like it was somewhere. I mean, people were interested to see stuff like downtown Covington has murals next to its really old bridge that was built in the 1800s, and people were interested to see that. And Covington has a lot of history. It's a very old city. It's actually from the 1790s, and I get it. It seemed more like a destination, but again, nothing nothing felt like a destination like Savannah did for me. And maybe that's just because I don't live there. Everybody who lived there probably just like, oh, whatever. But it felt like I was going somewhere. It felt like we made this long trek. Well, we did drive 10 hours to go there, but it felt like we were somewhere that was very distinct. Didn't just have some convention center threw up there. Like, people would go there regardless. It was already a tourist destination. And yeah, so it was different. It was interesting. I guess I had the main thing that's more fun for me about the camp and even the IGIC to a degree is just n- actually knowing people or meeting all these people because somebody else, and it's like a family reunion more because the industry I'm in is so small, you know. Whereas when you go to another type of conference and it's a bigger industry or you don't know everybody, then it doesn't feel like home, But this just felt like a family reunion, you know. That's what it feels like. You're like, oh hey, I knew this person when I was in school, or oh hey, I knew of this person a couple of years ago. I wonder how their life is turning out. And that could also be bad too. It might be nice to. I wonder. I have, even when I was at the C-Day conference, I ran into people I knew because of other people, and I kind of wonder what it'd be like to go to one that you just went to that you know nobody, that it's like completely out of the realm of anyone you know. I haven't been to one of those yet. Maybe I should try it sometime. I should like find some very out of the ordinary conference to go to and see if I can get my company to pay for it. They probably won't, but just to be at one that's different. Anyway, so then the next year after that, I attended another camp conference, and they did it in Louisville. And I have to admit, I've been to Louisville a few times. And at the time, my parents had a place where they were living in there, so I could stay there because my dad was working there part of the time. And uh, but I have to admit, it felt a little different because I didn't actually grow up in Louisville, and I'd only been there a few times. So it finally felt a little bit more like a pure conference where I was trying to um, and they held it right downtown, and Louisville's a much bigger city. I mean, granted, Covington, Cincinnati is that's bigger metropolis, but it was on the Covington side, not in the Cincinnati Convention Center. So you still felt like you weren't exactly in Cincinnati. Whereas in Louisville, we were in the Galt House, which is the main premier spot on the riverfront with the oldest convention center. So you felt like you were in the prime placement, if you will. And it felt more like a serious conference. It felt like, and that it was a, what am I trying to say? That it was a big city. It felt like, it was somewhere I was experiencing things again. But still, I have to say, it didn't feel quite as touristy as that time I was in Savannah. And it may just be I had such a good time because I was a senior in college and I didn't really have many worries or concerns or, well, I was concerned about getting employed after college. No, um, but I guess it feels a little different when you're going to a professional conference and it's just very to business to the point. I don't know, it just but it was still, I had a lot of fun because again it felt like a family reunion and my friend was there who was from there. Well, two of my friends were there who were from Louisville, and they seemed really fired up about being back in their hometown. And the guy who was one of the people I met there was very excited, and they were very like trying to be like, "This is Louisville. This is where we're having it this year. Woohoo!" And good for them. Good for them. If you're gonna have a conference, in a town, you really should make it about the town. I guess, and it seemed like they were recently fired up, and it felt like we were in Louisville, and yeah. So that is kind of my experience. Now, I want to take a minute as I sort of wrap up the episode, if you will, to talk about again. I feel like there's way too many spaces for this thing because it always becomes an albatross in all these cities when their city councils vote on these, and I don't know. I just don't understand how it could be profitable. Like I said, in the case of Bloomington, I know there's one in Columbus too, and you know these places are an hour apart and an hour from Indianapolis. How is there enough business to warrant that? I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe I'm being overly critical. Maybe somebody can let me know in the comments thread. But I don't know. There should be. I guess there should be a minimum requirement. Your city has to have 100,000, or you don't get one. No, you have to be 3 hours from the next city that has one. I don't know. You have to have 10 attractions for people to go to while they're at the conference, so it feels like they've gone there to see something as well. So yeah, I guess I'll leave that a bit open ended and let everyone see what's in the thread. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and talk to you all sometime soon. Peace.